You're listening to a New York Jets episode of the Jacob Valk Show. He's breaking down the team's latest goings-on as only he can. Follow him on Twitter at RealJacobValk. Here he is, Jacob Valk.
Hello, Jets fans! Welcome to another New York Jets recap here on the Jacob Valk Show. I'm Jacob Valk, yada yada yada, I don't care anymore. Oh, for God's sake. When I said I was going to do these Jets recaps, I thought they'd be competitive. I really did. If you had told me before the season started that the Jets would be the last winless team in the NFL, I wouldn't have believed you. But here we are. 0-6. 5 of the losses by double digits. The only single-digit loss was a 9-point loss to the Brett Rippon-led Broncos. I mean, I've run out of things to say. I just have. It's the same thing over and over again. Put Gase out of his misery, please. Nothing good is happening with Adam Gase as Jets head coach. I still don't think that all of this is his fault. He does deserve some of the blame. And the fact that he's featuring Frank Gore over LaMichael Pirine and Ty Johnson, who actually looked halfway decent, what's the point? Why are you trying to force feed a washed up former 49er? What's the point? The offense was inept. After the deep shots to Perryman didn't work in the first quarter, it was the most inept offense I've ever seen. Runs that went nowhere, short passes. The Jets didn't have a third down conversion until the fourth quarter. They were 2 for 17 on third downs. That is one of the worst marks I've ever seen from an NFL team at third down efficiency. They only had 148 passing yards. They are inept in every sense of the word. You've got the defense actually playing halfway decent. The Dolphins did not play well in this game. But the Jets were so bad that the 2020 Dolphins looked like the 72 Dolphins in comparison. The lack of talent is so striking that you could put a 3-year-old in front of the TV who has never seen an NFL game before, and you could tell him these are two NFL teams, the Jets and Dolphins, and he would turn to you with a straight face and say, is that team in green really an NFL team? Or are they a Pop Warner team? Maybe he wouldn't use the term Pop Warner, but he wouldn't believe it's an NFL team. I can't believe it's an NFL team. These guys stink in every sense of the word. They are dreadful from the top down. What's the positive? Tell me one positive in this game. The butt pick. We went from the butt fumble to the butt pick. Hey, Mark Sanchez. You know, you finally got your redemption after being eliminated on The Masked Singer. In all seriousness, that was a nice pick by Marcus May. It really, really was. I saw the fans of the Washington football team and the Minnesota Vikings on Twitter today saying, tank for Trevor. We want Trevor Lawrence. You're not getting Trevor Lawrence. The Jets have him wrapped up. Forget about it. You're going to win a few games by accident. The Jets are going to go 0-16. They really are. There's no way they win a game this season. None. The Dolphins at home? No. The Chargers? No. 0-16. Please get rid of Adam Gase. He's clashing with everyone. He's even clashing with Greg Williams, for God's sake. Look, I'm not saying this is all on Gase, but there's no good reason to keep him around unless you're really trying to lose. If the owner came out tomorrow and said we're trying to go 0-16, so there's no reason to make a coaching change, fine. You know what? I would respect it. And there would be no reason for me to keep watching these games. I could turn them off and watch decent football. I watched every second of that game today, because I have to talk about it. I'm telling you, if I had known they were going to be this bad, I wouldn't have said I was going to do instant recaps. How many different ways are there to say the same thing? The coach is in so far over his head, it's not even funny. You've got the GM with his hand over his face saying, woe is me. You're no saint in this, buddy. I gotta tell ya. The offensive line that you put together isn't much better than last year's putrid offensive line. It's funny, I was listening to the chat that I did with Dominic in March about the Jets. And I expressed skepticism about Douglas's plan. I was right. I didn't think they'd be this bad, but at least I can take some solace in me being right. I mean, there's no point in firing Douglas now. You have to let him finish the season. Then you fire him. You hire John Dorsey as your GM. He can hire Eric Bieniemy as his head coach. We'll have a Chiefs reunion. And they can build around Trevor Lawrence. This team needs to be torn down like no team has ever been torn down before. I'm a Nets fan. Okay? I remember the 09-10 New Jersey Nets going 12-70. One of the worst teams in NBA history. You know what they did after that season? They cleaned house. Kiki Vandeweghe, gone. Lawrence Frank, fired mid-season. 2/3 of that roster from the final game of the 09-10 season, the double overtime loss to the Heat, was off the team. They only had 4 holdovers the next year. Devin Harris, Chris Humphries, Brooke Lopez, and Terrence Williams. And even then, Williams only played in like a handful of games that season. He was traded very early on in a trade that brought Sasha Vujacic to the Nets. My point in mentioning this is that that's what the Jets need to do. 2/3 of this roster, maybe more, gone. Forget about it. Chemistry, out the window. I don't care at this point. You know what? The new guys can develop chemistry. Chris Johnson can rent out some rooms at Disney. I saw some people saying that this is proof positive that this isn't Sam Darnold's fault. So why are you getting rid of him? Trevor Lawrence is the best quarterback prospect we've had since Andrew Luck. And there are some people who would put him ahead of Luck. You can't pass on him. I understand that the Jets have holes up and down the roster. And you may think to yourself, it makes sense to trade the first overall pick for a bounty of draft picks. The logic makes a little sense, but you can't pass on Trevor Lawrence. This isn't like 2016, where the Titans and Browns passed on Jared Goff and Carson Wentz. Those guys were regarded as really good quarterback prospects. Some people called them great, but not elite. No one was putting them in the Luck class, the Peyton Manning class, the John Elway class. That's when it's okay to trade a high draft pick. When you don't have a franchise quarterback staring you in the face. There were real concerns about Goff. He looked like a bust until Sean McVay got there. There were real concerns about Wentz. There are a ton of calls right now for Carson Wentz to be benched for Jalen Hurts. The Hurts pick now looks like a stroke of genius by Howie Roseman. Trevor Lawrence is light years better than them in terms of how they were looked at headed into their draft. You can't pass on him. You want to trade down and get more picks? You could still do it. You have the Seahawks first rounder. Granted, you're not going to get an arm and a leg, but you'll be able to get some solid day 2 picks. You can get the best of both worlds. The fact that there are some people out there that don't think that Trevor Lawrence is destined to be a New York Jet in a little over 6 months is insane. The only way he's not going to be a Jet is if he goes out of his way to not be a Jet. If he stays in school or pulls an Eli Manning. Other than that, come draft day, Trevor Lawrence is putting on a Jets hat. Alright, that's going to do it for tonight. I know it's a short show, I'm sorry, but again, how many different ways are there to say the same thing? The Jets are an embarrassment to football. The only hope we have as Jets fans is watching Trevor Lawrence tear up the ACC. He looked fantastic against Georgia Tech. I understand that, Johnny Heisman isn't coaching the Yellow Jackets anymore, but still, Lawrence looked fantastic. A man among boys. So imagine that. We have to look to Saturdays to be hopeful about our NFL team that plays on Sundays. How embarrassing is that? Look at it this way. The season is 37.5% over. Regular episodes of The Jacob Valk Show come your way every weekday afternoon. New York Jets recaps come right after every single game. That's the promise I made to you before the season started. I'm a man of my word. Until next time, I am Jacob Valk saying that Rich Folkers is currently throwing up in the bullpen. Perhaps he just got finished watching the Jets.